everybody, and welcome to Pineapple Support. So, this is our money and mental health in the adult industry event. So, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Just so you know a little bit about Pineapple Support, just want to give you a little bit about us. We are a non-profit organisation. We specifically provide mental health resources for those in the adult industry. So, if at any point you would like to help and support us, because Pineapple Support is entirely donation-led. So, please do head over to the website, which is pineapplesupport.org, or go onto our socials. You can go onto our Instagram, which is pineapple_YSW, where you can donate. And of course, if you're looking for some help and some support, if you want to find out more about our events or our workshops, obviously head over to the website. You can find out everything. And just for those of you that haven't yet, don't forget we're also doing a cream pie challenge where you can cream for a cause. Check out the videos on our Instagram. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you help everybody to donate. Like I said, we are completely donation led. Now, I just want to introduce our first guest, which is Nicki. We're going to be talking about burnout, boundaries, and mental health. So I'm going to be handing you over to Nicki, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here and for the introduction. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. There we go. As Shar said, we are discussing, beyond the hustle, burnout, boundaries, and mental health in the adult industry, which is super important. Boundaries are something that I discuss consistently with clients. So, I'm really honored to be here to discuss this because I truly and honestly believe this is a very critical yet understated topic in our industry. So before we begin, I want to acknowledge the courage it takes everyone to be here today, and whether you're attending for yourself, a colleague, the business, what have you. Mental health in the adult industry isn't just important, it's essential for sustainability, safety, and personal fulfillment. Today's session is designed to be safe, judgment-free space where we can have an honest conversation about the unique challenges that we all face, and more importantly, practical solutions we can implement starting today. So a few of the objectives that I plan on going over today is first, identifying industry-specific burnout triggers and early warning signs. This isn't just about feeling tired. I'm talking more about recognizing the subtle signs that your mental health may be at risk before it becomes a crisis. Second, we'll navigate stigma-related mental health challenges. The reality is that stigma affects every aspect of our lives, from healthcare access to personal relationships, and we need strategies to protect our mental health despite these challenges. We'll implement safety-focused boundary strategies for both on and offline work. Boundaries aren't just about saying no, even though no is a complete sentence, but they're about creating sustainable systems that protect your energy, your safety, and authenticity. Fourth, developing sustainable practices that protect both physical and emotional well-being. This means moving beyond survival mode and actually thriving in this work. And finally, we'll create support systems within and outside of the industry, because none of us need to navigate these challenges alone. We are herd animals, in a sense. We need a community. So by the end of today, you'll have some practical tools that you can start implementing, not just the theoretical concepts that I'll discuss. So who am I, and why did Pineapple Support ask me to come here and talk about this for you today? So yay, the I Love Me slide. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. I also do coaching in other states and other countries. I'm a certified sex therapist. I'm a kink certified aware therapist, geek certified therapist, therapeutic game master. I'm also a therapist and presenter for Pineapple Support. I run the Monday night support meetings along with another therapist, Abby Mayer, to work with. It's just, support and processing for people in the sex industry. And it's really good for building community, which we'll go into later. So disclaimer, I will talk about some cases, but I won't say names because yay, HIPAA. I'm not going to give dates, no identifying informations. It'll be general overview to protect anybody that is in this industry that I have worked with, but they are valid for specific examples. that I will bring up. Let's see, understanding burnout. So let's start with the fundamental question. What exactly is burnout, and how does it show up differently in the adult industry? Burnout isn't just about being tired after a long day. It's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged exposure to emotionally demanding situations. But in our industry, burnout, it has more specific characteristics that we all need to understand. So the first major factor for performance pressure is the pressure of persona management. Unlike other service industries, you might have an off day. The adult industry often demands consistent performance of sexuality, enthusiasm, and availability. So you're not just providing service, you're performing an idealized version of sexuality, often regardless of how you actually feel. So performers and people in the industry have to be on a lot. And this creates what psychologists call emotional labor. It's the exhausting process of managing your feelings and expressions to fulfill the emotional requirements of your job. And when we're working with, performers and in the sex industry, you're not just managing your own emotions. A lot of them are managing the emotions of their clients and the fantasies, and sometimes their trauma too. I've had several clients go, I feel like I should get paid as a therapist when they're talking to their clients. So if you think about it, how many of you have had to be on, like the mask is there, you're performing in that persona and being authentic when you were actually feeling sad, anxious, or just, you're just being human. This compartmentalization, separating your work persona from your authentic self, can be psychologically exhausting over time. If you think about certain actors, the one that's coming to mind right now is Robin Williams. He was always the funny man. He was on, but deep, but in his off times, he was dealing with a lot of depression issues because it was really a struggle for him. And unfortunately, he did take his own life later because of all this not understanding and him not, asking for help or people not knowing what was going on. We won't get into that. But the second major factor is stigma-related chronic stress. This isn't just about occasional judgment. It's about living in a constant state of hypervigilance, like your head's on a swivel. You're always assessing, is it safe to mention my work? Will I face discrimination? Will my family find out? This chronic stress response affects every system in your body. There's also what we call internalized stigma, and that's where you unconsciously adopt that negative social attitude about your own work. This can lead to shame, self-doubt, reduced self-worth, even when you consciously know your work is valid and valuable. Now, the difference between shame and guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am wrong. I am bad. So all that internalized stuff, it can lead to this burnout. A third factor for safety is hypervigilance. Like I said before, your head's on a swivel. So whether you're working online or offline, there's a constant need for safety awareness that creates chronic hyperarousal in your nervous system. So you're constantly in that state of fight or flight, and that's exhausting for your body to maintain. You're just drained at the end of the evening. To where another job that has this, military, law enforcement, where they're constantly assessing for danger. That's the same for some performers when they're on or offline. Like, am I going to get found out? Is someone going to out me? And this will affect their own livelihood and income and, safety. So these factors create some unique manifestations of burnout that we don't see in a lot of other industries. First, we have body dysmorphia and appearance obsession. They become amplified because your physical appearance is directly tied to your income. You might find yourself obsessively monitoring physical changes or comparing yourself to other performers. Sexual dysfunction in personal relationships is common because the commodification of sexuality can impact how you experience genuine arousal and intimacy outside of work. Trust and relationship difficulties emerge because stigma and safety concerns make it challenging to form authentic connections with people outside of the industry. One example that I have of this is a person that I worked with. They specifically came saying, I don't know the difference between my stage persona and who I am anymore. I can't tell the difference. Like I'm constantly, like I said earlier, like they constantly felt like they had to be on, that they had to embody this 24/7. And it can become exhausting. Even if you're looking at movie actors, if they've been in a role for a long time, they need to take a step back to figure out who they are, to get back in their own body and their own sense of self. So they're not that character, that persona any longer. So the key points to take away is that if you're experiencing like these certain symptoms, the body dysmorphia, sexual dysfunction, trust relationship, you're not weak and you're not alone. A lot of people experience this, and it's a normal response for an abnormal level of stress. So let's talk a little bit about the hustle culture and how it's amplified in the sex industry. Hustle culture is the belief that constant work equals success and that rest equals a lost opportunity. No rest for the wicked. In the adult industry, this becomes particularly toxic because of several factors. So firstly, we have the 24/7 availability pressure. Remember that, I have to be on. Social media algorithms reward frequent posting and engagement, creating pressure to be perpetually on. Your personal times becomes potential earning, and traditional work-life boundaries disappear. I've seen this show up when I've had individuals say, I can commodify everything. I can sell everything. So where does that boundary come into play? Like I not just sell my socks or my underwear. I can sell my Q-tips, this, that, and the next thing. Or I could sell whatever, videos of me sleeping. So everything becomes that commodification, and it's that pressure to constantly post. So the fear of losing audience engagement drives many professionals to maintain exhausting schedules. The addictive nature of social media engagement, such as the likes, the comments, the tips, the messages, that creates that cycle where rest feels like a lost opportunity. You've lost money. Second is income instability and financial anxiety. This also drives that 24/7 availability pressure. The irregular nature of adult industry income creates unique psychological pressures. People can feel like it's a feast or famine cycle, just like with a lot of self-employment work. We have great times where we make lots of money, we're ballers. But then also you have the times where it's like, oh, I've got to choose between paying my light bill or getting groceries. So the feast or famine cycles. And it creates that anxiety about maximizing income during peak times. I have to make all this money now so I can save it for later. So when those times are slower and knowing when those certain lulls are going to happen. There's also platform dependency. So relying on third-party platforms to change, like they're going to change policies. Sometimes they ban accounts or cease operations at any time. This creates financial insecurity for performers. I've had several individuals say, I was banned from this platform, or they're changing their policies or terms of service, especially with payment or payment processors. That's become a big issue. Also, we're looking at age discrimination in the industry creates pressure to maximize earnings while you're perceived as young enough, leading to unsustainable work practices. The third that we have is comparison culture. Lastly, that I have in here is comparison culture, and that's the public nature of much of the adult industry where it creates intense comparison pressure. I've seen performers consistently exposed to, their other highlight reels. People will say their earnings on at the X platform or Blue Sky, and that this it can create FOMO, fear of missing out, or imposter syndrome. People saying, I don't know how to make that much money. And if they're even really making that much money, who knows? So these factors create serious mental health impacts, such as you have sleep deprivation from working late to catch peak online traffic or maintaining irregular schedules across time zones. Many professionals report difficulty turning off due to the notifications alert that are constantly coming up on their phones. Chronic stress and anxiety from the combination of the financial instability, performance pressure, and having that 24/7 availability that we talked about earlier. The body stays in that chronic stress response, which affects everything in your body. So they're not completing that stress response. And what that does is it can lead to illness because the body's not having that rest to repair itself. It takes its toll, like on the digestive system, thought processes, everything, and including depression and isolation. Despite having the constant online interactions with people, the isolating nature of much of the adult industry work combined with stigma contributes to loneliness and existential questions about life purpose. That's another topic that happens a lot in some of the groups is they come to group so they can socialize and talk and work out issues with other industry professionals because they get it. They don't have to constantly monitor, is it safe to say this? Is it okay to be vulnerable about this? Are they going to get my humor when I talk about clients? They come to group to be able to do that for that community. You also have increased substance use as a coping mechanism. Performers and individuals that are in the industry will use stimulants to maintain energy. Constantly go, we got to go here, we got to go there, we have to film this, we have to work here, we have to take these pictures. And they have depressants to manage anxiety. So trying to turn off, take depressants to go to sleep, to zone out. A lot of individuals say, I don't know how to rest. I don't know what that looks like. And then I feel guilty when I do rest because I could be making content, or this could be here, or this could be there. I've experienced that, working in the industry as well. It's like, oh, I could just film this right now and put it in content, or this, that, and the next thing. So the pressure is real. Or the common one is anxiety to cope with social anxiety and work-related trauma. Alcohol, what some people affectionately call social lubricant. And so there's a myth that we really need to bust in the industry is that you can make money while you sleep. The reality involves constant content creation, the 24/7 customer service, continuous marketing, and technical skill development. There's really nothing passive about it. Even when you have, the clips that are up that are pictures, things that are getting sold, and you're not having to do the work at that time for it, there's still a lot of work on the front end to get that done. And consistently when we're having to interact with clients and customers, that's work on the back end that we're having to do as well. So it's really not passive. So let's look at industry specific boundary setting. So we're moving on to solutions to help with this. Boundary setting in the adult industry work is both more complex and more crucial than in a traditional employment environment. The intimate nature of the work, combined with stigma and safety concerns, requires sophisticated boundary management skills. So let's start with, since a lot of sex work has been moved to digital, let's look at digital boundaries, which are absolutely critical for both safety and mental health. Platform and account separations, they have to be non-negotiable. You need to separate work and personal social media accounts to prevent clients from accessing personal information and to allow for the authentic self-expression outside of work. So you're still maintaining that touchstone to that personal, to yourself, for self-awareness, not just your work persona. Use dedicated communication channels, separate email addresses, phone numbers, whenever that's possible. Messaging apps. So we'll message privately for my personal stuff, let's say on Facebook, and all of my professionals can be on, WhatsApp, or even though they're the same, they're run by Meta, but anyway, there's still different messaging apps. Twitter, these things are for work and these are for personal. So being able to have those boundaries can help, and it prevents that personal life intrusion and maintains those professional boundaries. Separate financial accounts. So using different banking and payment processing for work to protect personal financial information and simplify tax preparation. Time and availability management, they're crucial to establish and communicate specific availability windows. So setting realistic times for expectations of message and request responses, saying, hey, I will be online Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 to 4, and having that be a consistent time that someone is available to chat with you, take requests, things like that. So you're also training your audience that this is the boundary that's to be expected. I'm not going to talk to you outside of these hours. Designate offline periods when your work communication is not monitored or responded to. This will also back up that boundary, saying, hey, this is when I'm going to be here. This is when you're going to expect a response from me. Use automated responses and scheduling tools to manage client expectations during offline hours. So that can also help with turning off as well. Your mental health requires that you have time when you're genuinely unavailable, time where you can just be you and not the persona, to rest, to let your brain just kind of turn off. Content and privacy protection includes avoiding geotagging, keeping personal information private, watermarking content, and understanding platform terms while protecting your interests. So client relationship boundaries. This is one of the topics that comes up an awful lot. Not necessarily, in sessions and in group when I'm talking to sex work for people in the sex industry in general. It's the boundaries to protect your well-being and your business. So the service definition and limits require explicit service menus with detailed descriptions of what is and isn't included, or you'll have that when someone asks you for your rates and things like that. Communicate your hard and soft limits clearly. So just like within the power exchange lifestyle, you have hard limits and soft limits. So what is not negotiable? I'm not going to go lower than this. I will make X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to be going in this category. And what's flexible? What are you able to bend on a little bit for that? Have prepared scripts for clients who test and push boundaries, and clear escalation procedures for clients who refuse to respect boundaries. That can look like you get blocked, or reporting to the platform about this particular person. If they test and push boundaries, that's part of doing what we say in DBT is broken record. My rate is X, Y, and Z. For for 1 minute of content or 10 minutes of content. Just keeping those boundaries, or I will send you 5 messages for X amount. I'm only going to text you between this time, because trust me, clients are going to try to push those and get more. Emotional boundary management means having guidelines for what personal information is appropriate to share. Remember that emotional support may be part of your service, but it has limits. You need strategies for maintaining professional distance while providing authentic connection. So what that means for emotional support is, yeah, we may listen to our clients while doing our sex work, but at the same time, where are our emotional spoons going to end for that? Where does the scope for you end on what you can provide for someone? I've had several performers be like, I feel like I'm a therapist, or I'm providing an outlet for them. And they respect that. They're like, yes, it's honored to be trusted with that. And at the same time, it can burn me out because I don't know how to be that emotional container. So setting those boundaries, like, hey, I can talk to you about this up to this limit, and other than that, you may need to seek a professional therapist or talk to somebody else. So again, setting those boundaries around discussing, let's say, personal trauma, or taking on the client's emotional burdens. You're a professional, but you're not a therapist. Financial boundaries protect your value. Set rates that reflect your skill, your experience, and market value. Have clear policies on deposits, payment timing, and expected methods. You know the rates might be flexible versus non-negotiable, and are able to articulate the worth and professionalism of your services. Physical boundaries are life-saving. Screening and verification protocols they need to be systematic, having methods of confirming clients' identity and legitimacy. And I would say that this is a higher protocol for those who are doing in-person sex work. Systems for checking references through professionals or databases, and training to recognize red flags. So going to specific conventions or trainings to recognize what's happening in the business, in the professional world, and also trust your gut instincts. I have an example from my own personal stuff where someone tried to use a digital check. I've never heard of a digital check before. Of course, I'm looking up like, this is probably a scam. And they did all the red flags. Send me a screenshot of your banking information. Send me, what's your full name? What's this? And this is how it's going to work. They had all this stuff. And then they used the line of, well, I'll give you $1,500, but I need you to send me 1,000 back. This is a way to gain access to your banking information, routing numbers, things like that they wouldn't have access to normally. And about that time I was done with the learning experience. I went, no, but this is a scam. We're doing that. So those were all the red flags for that particular thing for a digital check. And again, trust your gut instincts. If something feels off, like if someone's trying to get you off a platform real quick to talk to you on a different chatting site, they're probably trying to hustle to do a scam. So trust that gut feeling. Location and meeting safety includes meeting places that prioritize safety over convenience, having plans for safe travel, check-in systems with trusted contacts, and emergency procedures. I do know some performers who will have security with them. I know others that have a check-in system where they'll text somebody and say, hey, if I don't text you by this time, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. So those are those safety protocols for them. Personal safety boundaries protect your loved ones as well from work-related risks. Make thoughtful choices about who knows about your work and how much they know. Protect family members and this will protect them from potential harassment, and navigating friendships while maintaining work privacy. If anyone has children, this requires like special consideration for their protection and the family's safety. And this comes up a lot. I mean, a lot of these topics, I'm going to say they've come up. They're not new, where it's how do I know this friend is safe? How can I test the waters and bring this up usually when navigating friendships, or if someone has certain values or opinions about sex work, throwing in a question like, hey, what do you think about this movie? Or what do you think about just porn in general, to kind of gauge that person's value system of whether or not they're safe to talk to on that. And people can always surprise you one way or the other. Yes, they're open to this, but maybe they have a different opinion on pornography, or they're looking at, hey, you're doing what you need to do to survive, and it's an art form. There are a lot of different viewpoints on this. So how are we going to recognize the industry-specific warning signs for burnout? Like, we're going to need these boundaries, but what are the warning signs that maybe we need to tweak them or work more on them? So early detection of mental health challenges, they are crucial for prevention. These signs often manifest differently in the sex industry. So we're going to go through them systematically, and we're going to start with the physical warning signs of burnout. Physical warning signs include work-related health issues such as repetitive strain injuries from prolonged computer use, sexual health complications such as increased UTIs or infections, appearance-related health issues from makeup, lighting, enhancement procedures, and sleep disruption for irregular cycles. Okay, I have a question real quick on boundaries. Regarding setting boundaries, I've noticed that over the years, since social media has begun doing our own live shows, I'm also on TikTok. I've had a hard time not taking my online persona from social media to my webcamming. So how do I set boundaries when I'm logging into camming versus social media as a content creator? So what I would suggest for that is it depends on how quickly, have that transition period between going from social media to webcamming, if that's possible. Being able to have that moment of transition. Okay, I'm not doing this playful persona, this free spirit anymore. I need to go more into this. And you get men who become possessive all because, yeah. So setting boundaries, like, hey, for one, kindness doesn't equal weakness. You can be kind, but at the same time, it's that illusion that you might be everybody's person, but at the same time, you're nobody's. And if they're getting possessive, that behavior is not acceptable. Being able to say, that's not acceptable behavior here. This is my job. And still being professional about it. Saying what your needs are. Like, yes, I get it for X, Y, and Z, and I'm still having to do this work. Okay. I hope that answered the question. If not, you can go in the chat or just write me another question and I'll answer it for you, no problem. So here we're still looking at like the repetitive strain injuries, and if we're doing things and sleep disruption from a regular work schedule. I've had clients who've had regular joint injuries and they've had to go to the doctor and and you would expect, like, in a doctor's office, there's professional. They're supposed to treat the body, they're supposed to treat you, not judge what you do for work. So being able to say, hey, I've had a repetitive movement with my elbow or my wrist, or my legs, whatever's going on, they need to look at that as well. So if we're doing this consistently, we're not giving our bodies time to rest, that's going to be a problem. That's a sign that we're working too much. So watch for stress-related physical manifestations. That can include tension headaches, digestive issues, because remember, if we're in a constant state of fight or flight and burnout, that goes into all of our bodily systems, and that includes our digestive system. So that can be issues with, elimination, taking in food, our appetite's greater or less. We need to watch those, like frequent or unexplained weight loss or weight gain can be part of it. Frequent illness, because remember, if your body's constantly on, it's not getting that rest, it can't repair itself. So you're going to get sick more. Cardiovascular systems like heart palpitations, your heart's working on overdrive all the time if you are in fight or flight. So that rest is crucial for these systems to start repairing themselves. Substance use escalation is a critical warning sign. This includes increased tolerance to where maybe one drink a night would do it. Now we're having to do 2 or 3 or 4 or a 6-pack or a whole bottle of wine. If the tolerance is increasing, there's something going on there. Physical dependency signs like withdrawal symptoms. Each different substance has usually different withdrawal symptoms, but usually flu-like symptoms when you're withdrawing from alcohol. If it's a lot of dependency on alcohol, you can see the shakes. Health deterioration or substances affecting your quality of work and your safety. So that would mean you're not making good judgment calls anymore. Substances lower inhibitions. So we're not using all of our thinky parts to make appropriate judgment calls. Emotional and psychological warning signs. These can definitely include identity and authenticity struggles, like we talked about before. Feeling that disconnect in your body during or after work. Confusion about your authentic self versus work personas. Emotional numbness in personal relationships or anxiety about being real. Relationship and social difficulties manifest, such as isolation tendencies, increased trust issues, intimacy difficulties in personal relationships, or social anxiety, especially when work might be discovered. Mood and emotional regulation changes include extreme mood swings. You have trouble regulating your emotions, like during related to work performance or income. Chronic irritability, so chronic frustration or just over life negativity. Emotional exhaustion. It's like your body is physically feeling like you can do the things, but your brain is like, nope, you got that fog going on. Or feelings of hopelessness about your future options. So it's like, I don't see this getting any better. I don't know what to do about this. These are all warning signs of what's coming up for burnout. Behavioral signs show up in work performance changes like increased procrastination. So I get it, a lot of, there is like a big correlation with neurodivergence and the sex industry, and procrastination can be a part of that. However, if we're increasing the amount of procrastination that's going on, that's a behavioral sign. Declining quality in content or client interaction. Boundary erosion, where you accept previously off limits clients or activities. So things before where you'd be like, nope. Now you're starting to accept, we need to take that. Or the inability to maintain a consistent schedule. Financial behavior changes include impulsive spending during high earning periods and avoiding financial planning, taking on unsafe clients for money, or accumulating debt despite earning income. Self-care neglect, that can appear in personal hygiene, avoiding medical appointments, nutrition problems, or abandoning physical activities that you previously enjoyed. Cognitive warning signs include difficulty concentrating, having issues with memory, decision-making paralysis, and this just feeling of constant overwhelming. The key is recognizing these patterns early before they become severe. If you're experiencing several of these signs, it's time to take action. It's time to start implementing those plans we discussed earlier, or maybe seeking out professional help. I have another question. I would love advice on how to deal with the dehumanization that comes with the industry, such as friends sexualizing you or sending unsolicited nudes. I know setting boundaries would be important, but how do I deal with how it makes you feel like an object and dehumanized? If it's friends who are doing this, or like in quotations, friends, we need to discuss the nature of that relationship with friends, of those particular people, that's you are more than that. You are a human being. You have feelings. You're not an object. Discussing that and standing up for yourself, empowered to show up, can help you with that feeling not like an object or dehumanized. And if these friends continue to push or violate those boundaries, then you have to implement those consequences of those boundaries. Again, that's showing up for yourself and not abandoning you as a human being. So if like you continue to send me unsolicited nudes, I'm gonna have to block you, and we won't be able to connect anymore. It's just that's to save my mental health, and for me to not feel like an object and I'm not a human. So being able to tell people, hey, this is how this is making me feel, can make them do that mental check. Like, oh shit. So if they really value the friendship, they don't want to do this to you. They don't want you to feel like shit, basically. I also use foul language. I apologize. I know this is a professional platform, but it happens. And that feeling of not being dehumanized. So definitely follow through with those consequences and saying this is what you're doing with me. And that's not okay. So being able to not abandon yourself, be like, look, I'm a human too. So how do we start looking at sustainable practices and self-care? Hoping I can get through this in 5 minutes. So let's focus on these solutions, sustainable practices that will help you thrive, not just survive. Work practice strategies start with schedule management, so setting specific work hours and sticking to them. Your mental health depends on having genuine time off. Income diversification is crucial. So the rule of thumb is, 3 streams of income from different places. So being on multiple platforms, passive income streams when possible. And I said earlier, there is no such thing as passive. However, there are those platforms where you're paying for videos and you're not having to show up for that work at that time. Not putting all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So we're not going all in on this platform or all in on that platform. We're diversifying throughout. Platform changes and bans happen, so you need to protect yourself and your interests. Invest in personal development. So learning new skills, staying current with trends, and think about your long-term career sustainability. Some individuals have had to shift like their niches or what they're working on in this industry, and that's totally okay. That is part of learning new skills and staying current. Maintaining your health with regular STIs testings, mental health checkups, and don't neglect routine medical care because of stigma. You are important. If this is what you're using for work, you need to maintain it. And you are important as a human. You're worth it to go and take care of yourself. Document everything. So you're tracking your earnings, your expenses, and business metrics. This helps with both taxes and understanding your business patterns. The more you know about yourself increases your self-awareness. So then you can start picking up, oh, this is what's happening to me. This is what's happening here. Excuse me 1 second. Industry-specific self-care requires intentional identity preservation. So remember we were talking about who am I outside of work? Maintain hobbies and interests outside of work. These aren't luxuries. These are essential to maintaining your sense of self, who you are at your core. Like for me, I crochet. I do other forms of art. I don't sell my art hardly anymore because that became a commodification and it stopped being enjoying after that. Nurture relationships with people who accept your work. Invest in connections that support your whole self, not just your work persona. Take regular breaks from appearance and performance pressure. Your worth isn't determined by your ability to perform for the ability to perform sexually 24/7. Seek emotional processing through therapy with sex work friendly professionals. It's not, again, not a sign of weakness. It's professional development for your mental health. You're gaining coping skills. You're being able to vent and have an outlet. You're worth that. Connect with community through support groups, online communities, or industry friends. Isolation amplifies every problem. Financial wellness, building an emergency fund that's usually 3 to 6 months for expenses. Retirement planning despite irregular income. Tax planning and considering insurance options. Safety protocols require regular security audits for your online presence. Backup plans for platform changes. Legal consultations for business protection. And maintaining physical safety and routines. I have another question for regarding dating. I've been in the industry for over 18 years, and as it relates to dating, I used to mentor women as well in the industry, and they often ask me, should they tell their boyfriend or men they're dating that they're in the industry? And yet I even struggle with, should I tell, or how soon should I tell? I've been back and forth, but what I noticed, it always ends the same. Of course, they say that it's not the case. So again, how to negotiate dating with not oversharing. This is a common issue. I would like to say that it's not, but it is, because we're in the dating world, and most people will start dating within the industry because they understand, because of the boundaries that go with that. So it is a balancing act of what it's safe or not. Again, putting up those questions like, hey, what would you think about this? And start gauging their responses for that. When somebody, so when I do relationship counseling is my thing. So when I counsel on relationships, transparency is a big deal. So the other person needs to know what they are getting into as far as a relationship as well. So I'm not saying on the first date, open up, but if transparency is an important value for you, they need to be able to make a choice that, okay, if you're doing sex work, I understand that, I accept that, and are moving forward under that social contract. Now, if it comes up later that they have jealousy issues or the time that you spend at work, those are separate conversations that need to be had on what you're needing versus what they're needing and what each other can provide for that. So there's not a cut and dry answer on how soon should you tell. See, another question. I'm recently finding myself thrown into a stepmother role due to my parents or my partner's ex-wife having serious mental health challenges. I have never planned on being a stepmom, so I'd appreciate some support groups, counseling, and other resources for sex worker parents. That's awesome. I think I have some in the later slides for that. If not, I also have my email address. Just email me and I will get you some of those. All right, building resilience and support systems. So, yay, we're near the end. Finally, let's talk about building resilience and support systems because none of us need to navigate these challenges alone. Again, we are herd animals. We need people. Professional support includes finding sex-friendly therapists and counselors, legal advisors familiar with industry issues, financial planners who do not judge your income source, and medical providers with LGBTQ plus and sex-positive training. And these can be really hard to find. So, I mean, I know plenty of people on Psychology Today say they're sex work friendly. They're not that knowledgeable about it, but they're accepting, but that can still be like you feel like you're teaching them versus what's happening. So Pineapple Support does have a bunch of sex-friendly therapists that are wonderful. We have a lot of support groups as well. I was just at Fetish Con, and there were plenty of like lawyers that were talking about legal things that happen in the industry. So being able to find those, finding accountants, that's a big thing too. Finding those that are friendly for sex workers is a big deal. Don't settle for providers who make you feel ashamed or judge. You deserve professional and respectful healthcare and supportive services. Peer support is equally as important. I mean, I can give you plenty of research on how having that support can help you thrive. Seek industry mentorship for relationships, participate in online communities and forums, find local support groups where available, and connect with professional organizations and advocacy groups. I do have a slide that has different professional organizations in a minute. As far as Pineapple Support does have the support groups that I talked about earlier. And I have the peers in there that do talk to one another. Sometimes they'll talk to each other off, whatever. But they're trying to support each other through that and through this industry, which is a really big deal. And earlier someone mentioned that they provided mentorship. That's great. That's amazing. Also, an exit strategy planning isn't about giving up the career. It's about having options. So these skills include development of potential career transitions, education, certification programs, networking outside of the industry, financial preparations for career changes. I knew a person who was an exotic dancer. They decided that they wanted to make the transition to do harness racing, to train horses. So that was their exit strategy from the sex industry, was to get more certifications on how to do harness racing and on how to take care of the horses and train them and whatnot. So it's good to have that. Crisis resources are essential to have, so have them before you need them. This includes sex worker specific hotlines, support services, legal aid organizations, emergency financial assistance programming, and safe housing resources. So these are some of the industry specific resources that I have offhand. Of course, I've mentioned Pineapple Support, Cupcake Girls, Sex Worker Advocacy Network, the Red Umbrella Fund. I think the Red Umbrella does have sex worker parents page and support on their own. Sex Workers Advocacy Task Force, the Desire Alliance, and there are so many others that I just didn't have time to look up when I made this presentation. So let's get to some questions real quick. Do we still have time for questions? Because I think I have two. Okay, this is going back to the dating. That you're wanting to be honest and transparent but because you work as a webcam model, they say, oh, I don't judge, but what they want is to have sex or assuming I'm easy because I'm in the industry. They all say that they don't have an issue, but then all the future conversations circle back to the industry. Okay. So my what I would start doing is all those red flags that come up because there's a pattern with people who are like, yes, I don't judge, but then they all come back to the industry. Then these are red flags. Like, oh, we're gonna have to talk about this. So if all comes back to the industry, it's like, look, I'm wanting to have a genuine, authentic relationship with you, but it seems like that my job is preventing that intimacy. Help me understand the barrier. And that phrase, help me understand, helps out a lot.
Hi there, Nikki. Unfortunately, we have gone over time. So, if you don't mind, can you please answer in the direct messages? You've been absolutely amazing, though. Thank you.
Sure. Do I have any direct messages, maybe?
If you can message anybody directly, if anyone wants to get hold of Nikki, you can obviously get hold of her on Instagram as well. That's therapist_Nikki, is that right?
Yep, that's all my
Yeah.
contact information.
Yeah, that's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone for being so supportive as well in the comment section. And yeah, Nikki, thank you so, so much.